Hi, everybody. It's 1 o'clock, so let's get started here. Welcome to my webinar. Today we're going to talk about the 5 big must-dos that you should incorporate into your work with social media, website, email, any sorts of digital data, so that you can, stop just collecting this information and start using it to actually take actions and make decisions. So we're going to kick this off, and like I said, there's a chat box in the Zoom program here. So if you have any questions for me, it's hard for me to do both, give the webinar and answer questions at the same time. So just type them in there, and then we will get to them at the end of the presentation. So it should take about 30 minutes, and leave us another 5-10 minutes or so for questions. All right. Cool. All right, so let's do this. Okay, so first off, let me introduce myself. My name's Emily Patterson, and I am the one-person shop. I run a consulting company that specializes in working with nonprofits on their, just like this webinar says, their digital data. So I help them set up tracking, create dashboards. I do trainings on Google Analytics. So I pretty much, if you need help, getting information out of your analytics, feel free to shoot me an email. It's my email address here is emily@bmeasure.com, and I would love to hear from you. Oops. Hey, can everybody hear anything? Yep. Oh, okay, cool. Someone just sent me a message saying that they couldn't hear, but guess no problem. All right, so this presentation is going to cover 1 don't do. We're going to start off with that, and then it's going to move on to 5 things that you should do. And I hope at the end you'll be able to take these things back to your office and implement them. And like I said before, stop just collecting data, and be able to turn that into something where you can make decisions and take action based off of it. So first off is my don't do. This is what I call the giant spreadsheet. This is a real life giant spreadsheet. I won't name any names, but this is, I find, what a lot of clients and other places I've worked, this was their solution to tracking data and getting insights. They take their social media posts, their website stats, pretty much anything that they're collecting data on, and they put it into one giant spreadsheet here. And they're kind of hoping that by having everything in one place, they're going to produce insights from that. What I find really ends up happening is that they use this to make some charts and graphs, maybe for a grant proposal or for a year-end wrap up, but they're really not getting much insight, and they're not using this on a daily basis to be able to say, like, this is working, we should do more of this, or this isn't working, so we should do less of this. I like to make the analogy with the giant spreadsheet here, that essentially it's the same thing as, deciding, okay, 2017 is going to be the year that you're going to get in shape. And instead of kind of changing any actions about what you do in your life, say eating healthier or exercising more or whatnot, instead, your way to approach this is to go out and get every single fitness, health, food tracker under the sun and just start tracking all your stats. I mean, that's essentially what the giant spreadsheet is. So this isn't going to actually lead to any insights or lead to any changes if all you do is collect numbers and don't actually make any changes in your lifestyle. So it's essentially you're collecting a bunch of information about what you're doing, but you're not going to, be able to run that 5K or lose 10 pounds if you're not really figuring out what's working and making some changes based on it. So when I think of giant spreadsheets, one thing I think of is Grumpy Cat. I think the giant spreadsheet is a sure way to make either yourself or your staff or your interns really think that data sucks. Because, a lot of us, we didn't have a great experience in math class, and we're kind of predisposed to think that, numbers aren't very fun. And if you make them into this sort of busy work where, every single time you post on Facebook or at the end of every week, you have to go and record that information in a giant spreadsheet, it's going to be really hard to convince your staff that making data-driven decisions is important, because they're just going to associate this with busy work. I honestly think that it is pretty much busy work, because with a few exceptions, you're pretty much just recording information that's available in Google Analytics or in Facebook Insights or in MailChimp or wherever you're pulling it from. So, I stepped back for a second and I thought, why are so many people doing this? And I really think that these giant spreadsheets are a product of FOMO, hashtag FOMO here. It's a fear of missing out. People think that by recording everything under the sun, they won't miss out on a single insight. And that's simply not true. I think by collecting so much information, you create a new problem that becomes way too hard to make any decisions based on it. That pretty much when you have a giant spreadsheet like that, it's a giant analysis project to come up with, any insight or direction. The data should be simple, and it should be easy enough so that you're looking at one or two numbers to decide whether the direction you're going in is the right direction. And so that's where I'm hoping you'll be able to at least start getting to after today's webinar. All right, so out of my 5 tips, this is number 1, that's the big number 1 sign here. The first thing is rather obvious, but I think now kind of in our culture where everyone is looking to figure out what to track and collect lots of data, that it's very easy to lose sight of your bigger goal. So my number 1 tip is to take a step back first off before you start doing anything else and decide, just really review what it is that you're trying to achieve with this particular campaign or, in this fiscal year. And frame that it doesn't necessarily, at this stage, need to be something that is super trackable. It's great if you have already defined that, you want to grow your audience 50%, or you want to increase donations by 20%. But at this point, it could be also something, less measurable, like this example here, that, I want to reach a broader audience with my message. And just be super clear about, what you're trying to do first before you get into the game of picking metrics. So each point here has a particular hashtag behind it, just because I like hashtags and picking these out were kind of fun. So for tip number 1, this is hashtag goals. Make sure you don't lose sight of your big picture, your organization's end goal here. Keep your focus on this, and then ultimately work backwards from this. Once you have this determined, then you can move on to tips number 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so let's say that you picked your goal for your particular campaign or your organization. Now we're going to talk about selecting a metric for that goal. So number 2 is the belly flop. Number 2 is, so what's a belly flop? It's like a cheesy analogy here for what happens when you don't pick a clear direction. So a belly flop's what happens when you can't decide, okay, it's beautiful out, you're going for a swim, you get up on the diving board, and you decide that you want to try and dive in. Then you're like, oops, no, actually, I don't know how to dive. I'm going to go for a cannonball. And before you can make up your mind, you're landing flat on your stomach, ouch, in the water. So belly flop is, what happens when you're torn between two directions and you can't kind of commit to one or the other. So this is my analogy for what happens with marketing metrics, which is the next slide. Oops. Actually not. It is. We're going to extend our, okay, so one more point here. With the belly flop here, the same thing happens with marketing campaigns. Generally, we're gonna, on a future slide, there's generally two different directions you can go. And you want to make sure that you commit to one and not be torn between trying to do both things. All right, that's very similar. Back to our fitness analogy. This runs through the whole presentation. And I always think it's rather ironic because I am not super into fitness, but it works really well as it's something we're all familiar with, and it works well to make a comparison about, setting goals and achieving them. All right, so we're going to think back to that, the analogy where, okay, you decided that, downloading every fitness app in the world is not going to help you get in better shape in 2017. So instead, you've decided that you're going to get more specific about what you're trying to do. And in general here, we're going to say that there's two different ways to say that, to kind of measure that you're getting more fit. You're either going to track weight lost or muscle gained. So these are two different paths to the same goal, essentially, which is fitness. But you want to make sure that you, if you are aiming to get in better shape, you pick one or the other. Because if you're trying to gain muscle, you're trying to lose weight at the same time. I mean, when you're measuring that, it's not going to work. Because as one thing, muscle goes up, you're not going to see your weight going down. And it's going to create this weird mixed message, and you're not going to have an easy time measuring your success if you're looking at both directions at the same time. So you want to pick either one or the other. This holds very true with marketing metrics or communications outreach metrics for nonprofits. So on column B, essentially the same thing as either losing weight or gaining muscle. When one is going up, the other is going down. This happens with these two different paths. So path A here, this is all about growing your audience. If you pick path A, you're going to look at metrics such as your audience size, your number of new donors, your number of website users, website sessions, the size of your email list. This is all about how big is your pie. On column B here, this is kind of the opposite. It's all about your engagement. So where A is all about getting bigger, B is all about going deeper, doing more with the same size pie. So good metrics, if you want to measure these sorts of engagement things, are engagement rate. So on social media, this is the percentage of your audience, that leaves comments or likes. Rather than growing donors, maybe you're encouraging your existing donor base to donate more often or interact with you more often in other ways. Rather than just new users or more users for your website, you want to look at how often people are returning. You want people to come more often and stay longer on the site. So it's all about the depth and quality of the experience. And I want to say that not one or the other is better. It just depends on where you are at that time. And I think it's totally fair to do column A for this 6 months and then switch to column B. You're launching a new site, so you want to grow traffic. Then when you get to a place that you're happy, maybe you want to focus on column B and get more people to come back regularly. The thing is, you just don't want to do both things at one time. And the reason why is this lovely piece of clip art here. Generally, when you have a column A, so a pie size metric, and you have a B, which is an engagement metric, when one goes up, the other one goes down. So when you're web traffic and you're doing things like running AdWords and doing lots of partner outreach and maybe running Facebook ads and all this stuff to get more traffic to your website, your engagement metric, time on site, is going to go down. Ultimately, when you're getting more people, new people, they're just not going to be as super devoted to your organization as your existing people or the people you're getting without doing much outreach. So, with a few exceptions, this will always be what happens. So the thing you want to do, make sure you're doing, is that you want to make sure that hashtags, decisions, you want to be clear. When you define your goal, you want to either set it as a growth goal or an engagement goal. You don't want to pick metrics from either side of the column. This is going to get very confusing when you're looking at the data, whether you're being successful, because you're going to see one thing going up while the other thing going down. So you want to pick one column to emphasize at one time. And if you feel like you've reached a point where you're happy, totally switch to the other column. You just don't want to do them both at one time. All right, hold on, take a drink of water here. Number 3 here is all about social media side-eye. So you guys may have seen, I posted a bunch of listservs and things to advertise this webinar, and I see a lot of people on listservs asking questions that are totally valid, but they want to know, what else is everyone tracking, or what's the average open rate for an email, or the average click-through rate for a Facebook ad. And I think this interest, just like this picture shows, is, this interest in what everyone else is doing and evaluating yourself against everyone else is totally natural and totally human nature. But I think when it comes to social media, it's a little bit, and websites and, all our marketing campaigns, it's a little bit counterproductive, because all of our organizations and all of our audiences are special, and you really have to look at what's working for your particular group. So to get back to our wonderful fitness analogy here, I think this one, as someone who's only run 2 5Ks in my entire life, I am well acquainted with this. So, instead of, talking about marketing campaigns here, we're talking about training for a race. And this is a good example of one time when you are going to be your own baseline. If you're working on, working up to a 5K or a 10K or half marathon or whatever, you're not going to compare yourself against, a professional Olympic athlete. You're going to compare yourself against yourself. You're going to time yourself and figure out where you're at that moment and try and improve upon that going forward. And I think this is a philosophy that we really need to take into our approach for, our outreach, marketing, communications campaigns. You should, check back. I know this is kind of something that maybe can't be done 100%. Take a look at your historical data, reach into your giant spreadsheet, and kind of create a baseline out of past data so that you can measure what you're trying to do going forward. And these are just some suggestions for A column and B column baselines that you can take. So if you're doing a column, a growth campaign, you want to take a look back. I typically recommend year over year, because these organizations where I've worked, traffic patterns change. Donations, things change a lot from month to month. What goes on in December looks very different than September, which looks very different than July, when everyone is out of school and on vacation. So it's worth taking a look back a year or a look back to a similar time period and calculating out, what were your average donations or visitors or social media. Well, that you probably just do it over the previous month. Your social media metrics. On the B side, same thing. You want to take a look at a similar time period and calculate it out. In this case, this is typically going to be a rate or time on site or another kind of engagement type metric. So like I said, the key thing with this is really to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples, looking at the right time period. So this one is hashtag youdoyou. Don't get too wrapped up in what everyone else is doing. Focus on being your own baseline and competing against yourself. All right, number 4 here. So number 4 is all about setting goals that work for different channels. So I think everyone here probably is doing their communications on a lot of different outlets. And you might be one person in an office, but you might be the only communications person at your whole office, but this will still affect you. But for the sake of this picture, we're going to pretend that what we have here, over here on the left, we have, the social media department, and they're busy putting stuff out. This is all the same goal, all the same cause, but they're putting stuff out on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, all about this campaign. Okay, and then we have a content department. They're busy, writing email newsletters or posting on the website or whatnot. Another place all about this campaign. Then say you have a paid media team or a paid media person, and they're running, Facebook ads and Google AdWords and banner ads. So they're all, talking about the same stuff and trying to push towards the same goal, but they're all doing it on different platforms. And one thing they're also doing is they're also evaluating their success by different metrics. So social media, and each social media platform has its own metrics, so we're talking about likes on Facebook and retweets on Twitter. And with email, we talk about open rate and click-through rate. With advertising, it's impressions and cost per conversion and all of that stuff. So it becomes very difficult to compare all of these different channels and say that all of these different channels contributed to one goal. So we get this sort of like lizard disconnect here. So like these two chameleons, they're working on the same project, but they don't know, here we got the social media and here we got the website. And even though they're trying to support the same thing, they don't really talk to each other. So fortunately, Google Analytics has a pretty cool feature, and you can use it to set it up. It's called UTM tracking, UTM parameters, or campaign tracking. It has about 5 different names. But if you Google that, you can find it. This is one way that you can track all of your different marketing channels. When they point back to your website, you can associate each of them with an action on your website. The example I chose here is a donation, but you can really tie them to any goal using Google Analytics, so that when you look at your data, you can see, all right, Twitter drove 20% and Facebook drove 30% and email drove 50%, say, and these partner links, they didn't drive anything. So that you'll be able to know the contribution of each individual channel and see it all together in one place, rather than having to go to each of these platforms and try and suss out what's working. Because it's all about getting everything in one place where it's easier to see. All right, so this one, to recap, is hashtag same thing. It's worth taking the effort to set up all your marketing channels so that they're on the same page, looking at the same metrics for all of them. All right, so to wrap up here for number 5 is science. If you think back about what you've done here, you've gotten your big goal for your campaign, you've created metrics, you've set a direction and picked a metric for it, then you created a baseline, maybe you looked back at previous year traffic or previous month engagement, and decide that this is your baseline that you're going to try and improve upon. Then you took your marketing channels and you got them all on the same page so that you're looking at, kind of one end goal for all of your different channels. So now it's time for the fun part, which is science. So now that you got everything together, it's easy enough to kind of create your own version of a science experiment. So you're going to you might try some different things here. Maybe you're doing something like more frequent emails or different types of posts or, different copy in your paid ads. It's a lot easier now to look at your final metric and decide whether that is moving the needle or not. I have one quick example for you of one time I did this in my experience and something that you could totally replicate. These are Facebook ads for my work. With PBS Digital Studios. So they had a new show that was all about science, and it's from the makers of Nova, and they were trying to figure out how gross this show is. Super gross. How gross should they be in advertising the show? So we knew how well their ads had performed in past campaigns. So we did some experimenting where for over the course of a couple of weeks for new episodes, we'd run a very sciencey one and a gross one. I want to say that the gross one won every single time. People are into that. But it's just a simple way where you can, devise your own experiments and run. This was the cost of Facebook ad. So, it could be $20, honestly. I think we did more than that to get some insights into what's working or what's not working. So, but it's very important to, apply some sort of scientific rigor here. I know that it's, communications and not, a lab, but you want to do things like, keep the same images, do the same spend, use the same links here, and just change the copy. You don't want to get carried away and change everything at one time. All right. So in a previous version of this presentation, someone asked me, where do you get these ideas for what to test? And I think this is a great use for your giant spreadsheet. So you can take a look back on past months, past posts, and kind of say like, oh, well, that worked really well, or that didn't work really well, and see if you can replicate that success. If you had, say a standout post, doing similar types of posts, did that also get the high click-through rates or whatever that you're trying to go for? So this tip, this is hashtag science. Just to recap, now that you have your one metric to look at and your baseline, it's time that you, kind of tweak what you're doing and treat your marketing like a science experiment. And see if changing a few things can get you a better result. All right, this is the end of that presentation. I have a little bit of a recap here, but then we can, go over any questions that people have. So feel free to type them in. So number one hashtag and number one tips is goals here. So make sure no matter what happens, you keep your end goal in mind, and that everything else, the other 4 tips here, are really in service of that goals, so that you're not just tracking things and doing cool science experiments for the sake of doing them. It's all in service to your end goal. Number 2 is decisions. Start by picking a direction you want to go with your metrics. Are you trying to grow your audience, or are you trying to deepen engagement? Pick one or the other, but don't do a belly flop by trying to do both. Number 3 is you do you. Take a look back on your historical data and try and set your own baseline for, depending on what your goal is, how you've done in the past, so you can easily see whether you're improving upon that. Number 4 is same thing. You know, it's worth, I think, setting up your analytics so that you're tracking everything in one place, and that you can see how your marketing channels compare to each other easily. And then number 5 is the fun part, #science. You know, get creative, look back on what has worked, and see if, you know, by doing more of that or by tweaking this or that, you can move the needle. I just want to leave you with one final thought. Pretty much, this is a joke on my hometown. I am from Cleveland, and I am not really a Browns fan, but I do love a good Browns joke. So the Browns, pretty much every year after about the second game of the season, people start breaking out their, well, in this case, actual jersey. They start talking about next year. They're like, next year we're going to get them. We're going to get this player, and we're going to be better. We're going to make it to the playoffs next year. So I want to say, don't be a Browns fan. Don't take your data and think about, oh, what are we going to do better next time? You know, set up your data in such a way so that you can make improvements this year on this campaign. And to finally wrap up, because honestly, this is ultimately a way for, you know, me to reach out and tell you guys about my business. This whole presentation has talked a lot about just data in general and good practices in general. And so if you want something that's more applicable to your specific goals and your specific situation, I am, of course, more than happy to help you with that. I offer an introductory package. It's $500, and, you know, take a couple of weeks, and pretty much it's a consultation and a initial data deep dive audit. So it's a review of your goals, an audit of your account, and a personalized plan for your organization to figure out how you can better use data to accomplish your goals. So if you're interested, just shoot me an email or go on my website. The information's right there. Great. And in the meantime, this is how you can stay in touch. Here's my Twitter handle, email address, and I also have, I think some of you guys are subscribers, but I have a weekly data email that goes out that's all about data for social email, other types of marketing. Goes out every Friday morning, and I try to keep it fun. All right. This went a little bit over, but if you have any questions, you can type them in here. And if not, I can close this down. Anybody? Cool. All right. Looks like everybody is good. Well, thanks so much for joining today. It's been great talking to you. Yeah, and if you have anything else, you can always email me separately, and I'm happy to help. Great. Awesome. Have a great afternoon, everyone.